Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word, recording in October on Friday the 13th. And God bless you. No, I'm not the least bit superstitious, but some terrible things are on the calendar for today now that Hamas has declared that there's going to be an uprising. And the leader of Hamas is demanding that Muslims around the world lay down their lives and shed their blood for Palestine, and that they will stand up against these evil Jews and Christians around the world and start terrorist activities anywhere they can. Now, how many Muslims are actually going to pay attention to this idiot? I hope not any, but we know that some will. They have ever since 9/11. If you want to check out an interesting website, go to thereligionofpeace.com, which has tracked the atrocities of these Islamic terrorists ever since 9/11. You'd be astonished to hear that there have been over 44,000 deadly terrorist incidents since 9/11. Most of them aren't covered in the news. The news media doesn't want to hear about those, but over and over again, people, in the name of their version of this particular religion, which we identified from this part of the book of Revelation yesterday, this particular religion has been the source of their inspiration to create this reign of terror around the world that continues to today and unfortunately will continue until Jesus comes. Now, where were we yesterday? We were looking at some interesting things that are happening that seem to be echoing exactly what's happening in the news today. We saw that there were seals opened and 4 horsemen of the apocalypse begin to ride on the earth. Now, what are the views of these 4 horsemen? You know, I say there are 5 views of Revelation, mine being an eclectic view, but what about the other 4? What do they believe about these 4 horsemen? Briefly, the historist view states that the seals are actually the stages of church history, but perhaps describing the church from the late 1st century to the late 4th century. Well, now, for those of you who have that historical view, you don't think it even applies to the time in which Muslims overcame Jerusalem and conquered it. You don't even see Islam as a part of the history that represents these seals. Where does that come from? Now, I know some folks who have a historical view who say, oh, no, it goes farther than that. But the official publication here says that, oh, yeah, it's history, but it's limited history. I think that's ridiculous. Now, the preterist view basically says that the seals describe the Roman war with the Jews, which led to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And that's it. And it's over and done with. Well, guess what? I do believe that was a part of the fulfillment, but that's not the end. In preterist, you've missed the entire rest of history that can be applied to these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Then the futurist view is, to me, even though this is where I was raised, this is what I was taught to believe in, had to study for an entire year in Bible college to even get my associate's degree, I was taught this is the view, okay? The futurist view says the seals begin to describe the Great Tribulation, with each opening seal leading to a greater tragedy upon the earth. In other words, none of these things have ever happened, nor will they happen until after the rapture of the church. So you're just blinded about anything that might look like it applies to these seals in the past or in the present. But then finally, the idealist view says that the seals are about recurring evils throughout history and God's authority over them. This is one of those times, and there aren't many of them, where I would be more in agreement with the idealists because they at least recognize that this is a recurring pattern that God is giving us of what happens when antichrists, and remember John said they're plural, there are many of them, when antichrists go out conquering and to conquer. And one of the things that happened that allowed us to know that this really points toward the Islamic version of this happening over and over is when these 4 horsemen ride, the 4th horse in particular has a unique flavor about it. Let's read in John's writing here in the revelation of Jesus Christ given to him, chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, 'Come.' And I looked, and there was a pale green horse." Now it says in the Holman Christian Standard Bible, a pale green horse. Now, before I read the rest of this, I want you to understand something. Bible translators have had a problem. They are human beings. No one's ever seen a green horse. They imagine this must mean it was a sick horse. Far from it. Some versions even say sickly green horse. Go back and look at your Greek lexicon. Go back and look at what it actually says. John said, "I saw a chloros hippos," a green horse. That word chloros in the Greek, it's the same word from which we get the English word chlorophyll, that which gives our green plants its lush color. It's used elsewhere in Scripture. For example, when Jesus was going to feed the 5,000 and he said, "Get the people to sit down," and they did. They sat down in groups on the green grass, okay? So Bible translators seem to have a problem with imagining a green horse. And so they started inserting words that have nothing to do with this passage. That's why many translations don't even use the word green. They'll say a pale horse. There is no Greek word here for pale. The word is green. So what is it about this gross horse we're looking at that he is suddenly green? And what happens is that, and this is part of what led the translators, I think, to believe it must have been a sick horse or a pale horse, because it says that the horseman on it was named Death, and Hades was following after him. And authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill by the sword, by famine, by plague, and by the wild animals of the earth. You know, I've heard some of my futurist friends try to interpret this passage and say, look here, at the beginning of the tribulation, there's going to be a war, and a fourth of the people on the earth are going to be killed in that first war. That's not what it says. Read it again. It says that these four horses were given control over a fourth of the earth. It doesn't say they killed a fourth of the earth. Please get your metaphors right when you're interpreting Scripture. So here's a picture of this Antichrist conqueror who brings the war, the famine, the plague, and he's finally imaged here on a green horse of all things that has control over, authority over a fourth of the earth. Now watch it fulfilled in literal history. When Muhammad went out to ride and start the conquest of Islam, something that happened even after he died, it spread like wildfire until it was blocked at different places. The extent of the kingdom was stymied. In Europe, they fought against it. In different places, people rose up and fought against it, and the kingdom could only expand so far. At its height of the Umayyad Caliphate, it controlled about, guess what? A fourth of the population of the earth was under its Islamic control. It has waned back and forth through the years as Islam spread along with the population of the earth. And today, if you look at the figures for Muslim population in those countries it controls, guess what? You're going to get very close to that same figure, a fourth of the population of the earth. How in the world could prophecy be any clearer? Because within this prophecy, there's not only a prediction, but there's a promise. The promise is that Islam will only control a fourth of the population of the earth. There's a lid on it. So for those of you who are concerned if they will actually control everything or not, no, that's not going to take place. But what is interesting is the fact that this color green represents the color of Islam that is most prominent. The Islamic flag is a green flag. The flag of Saudi Arabia, where Mecca is green. It's a color that is lifted up and predominant. If you would pick one color that's the color of Islam, it is green. I want to call your attention to a couple of books by a guy named Joel Richardson. He's written many of them, and one of his first that's most famous is this one. It's called The Islamic Antichrist. He looks at this Antichrist figure from a futurist viewpoint and says he's got to be a Muslim. It's a Mideast thing. His other book that's quite interesting I want to quote from is entitled The Mideast Beast. He sees the beast altogether as being Muslim. I would disagree in saying, no, the beast is a worldwide kingdom, but one of those horns of the beast is a guy he's going to describe as the Mahdi that's coming from Islam. Now, I'm going to, in a subsequent broadcast, give you some quotes from his book that will just scare you to death and show you that, yes, there is an Islamic connection not only to this Antichrist that comes in the end, but what's going on right now all around Israel. Well, listen, it's a Friday, the 13th. You have a safe and wonderful day in the Lord. Worship with God's people this week and keep looking up. Because, my friends, if these guys are on the scene, that means Jesus is coming. God bless you.